Thank you, everybody, for joining us today for our COVID-19 webinar update for the week with Melissa Bova and John Longstreet. As we always say, please keep your lines muted during the presentation and use the chat feature. Be sure to chat to the group, everybody, when you send a question in, not just to Eric, so that Melissa can see it. And with that being said, I will turn this over to John to introduce it.
Thanks very much, Hope, and welcome to everyone today. We have a lot to cover, so I'm going to suspend any opening comments, and I'll chime in a little bit later as Melissa needs me. I did want to remind you that this webinar is intended for the hospitality industry and to help you with the resources and information that you need. It is not on the record, it is off the record. We're always happy to answer any press inquiries, and Melissa and I spent a lot of time doing so. But because this is off the record, anyone from the press who might have dialed in should disconnect, please. I'd also like to thank our friends from Dell Technologies. It's a time where everyone is struggling, and it's very helpful to have Dell step forward without us asking and offer to sponsor these webinars. So please remember Dell if you need computer equipment in the future. They've been a good friend to us, and we really do appreciate them. And with that, I'll turn it over to Melissa, and I'll probably be back to answer questions or chime in later. Melissa, it's all yours.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my weekly brain dump, where I tell you everything I know, and then I make up the things that I don't. Today, we are going, I have updates on all things, but we're going to be doing a deep dive into House Bill 327, which is that mixed drinks to go bill. So that's going to be a key part of the discussion for today. So if you don't want a cocktail yet, my goal is to make you want to get a mixed drink by the time I'm finished my pitch. So let's jump right into federal stuff. P3, I am looking forward to the week that I don't have to tell you we're still waiting on P3, and that week is not this week. We are still waiting on a few fronts. There are some silver linings and things that we are hearing from Treasury as it pertains to P3. But generally, we don't have a lot of answers. This week, Treasury did say publicly and acknowledge the fact that the hospitality and restaurant industry specifically is in a unique place, which we all knew we were unique, but really a unique place as it pertains to the P3 and the fact that it really doesn't apply or help our industry in its current form, and that changes will need to be made. That was publicly said. So far, no changes have been made as it pertains to the restaurant piece. Further, we are still waiting, and I know many of you are about 4 weeks, if not more, into the use of your P3, and we still do not have the answers that we are looking for as it pertains to forgiveness on the 75-25 split. For example, we believe full-time employee is 30 hours a week. That's what's in the Internal Revenue Code as it pertains to the Affordable Care Act. Treasury has not confirmed that. We have not seen the exact scenario of you need to pay your employees at least 75% of what they were paid before. Is that across the board for all your employees, or is that individually for employees? Don't have the answer to that. So a lot of these loan forgiveness items that a few weeks ago I was trying to say the banks had the answers because we didn't have the answers. It turns out no one has the answers. The Treasury has not told us the answers yet. So that is continuing to be a discussion. I do think the way that they're acting that we might see guidance within the next few days. I know I told you this last week, but I mean, every week we have to get closer to getting guidance. But I do think that we're going to see it soon. And we can, as soon as we get it, we're going to get all of that information out to you, especially as it pertains to any changes on the restaurant piece. And that's really, where we are in terms of next steps is getting answers of where we are right now, legislatively, and I'll get to that. As you can see, I have it on there. Legislatively, these changes are not going to happen anytime soon. So beyond what the Treasury can do, legislative changes do not look to be a this week or next week thing. So keep that in mind as it pertains to waiting on Congress to do something. They probably will not do that if you, in the time of you having received the loan, if you were the first wave of people receiving the loan. HEROES Act. This was introduced yesterday. And I love because Congress names every bill. So we had CARES Act, now we are at HEROES Act, introduced yesterday by the U.S. House, which has Democratic control. And why do a $2 trillion bill when you can do a $3 trillion bill, which is what they introduced? It is broad, it is sweeping. It extends the $600 for unemployment insurance to the end of the year. It puts another pot of money, that the checks that people have been receiving from revenue, it does another flood of those checks to individuals. Further, it includes numerous changes as it pertains to the P3. It extends that use date that currently expires. You need to begin using the loan by June 30th. It extends that to December 31st, that you can use it between now and December 31st. It includes provisions to expand for all my DMOs. I know you're waiting with bated breath. It does include provisions for 501c6s to participate in the P3, in addition to adding another $10 billion to the P3. It eliminates the 75-25 rule. I think one of the most frustrating pieces for restaurants. It also changes, if you use it for a loan instead of the forgiveness piece, it changes that 2-year requirement to pay off the loan to 5 years. And includes some other clarifications as it pertains to the employee retention tax credit, allowing businesses to utilize the P3 and also the ERTC, which according to the Treasury is not permitted. It also includes hundreds of billions of dollars in funding to states and local governments and hospitals and public assistance and everything under the sun as it pertains to assistance. It sounds glorious, especially for those of you that need that funding or need the changes to the P3, but the U.S. Senate, which is controlled by the Republicans, have already said, don't get your hopes up. We will not consider anything like what was introduced by the House. So some of these provisions might survive and see a finish line in all of this, but we do expect a much more tailored piece of legislation to go through the Senate. And the Senate has publicly said they do not plan to return until Memorial Day. So this is not something that you should be expecting to get across the finish line in any form or capacity until we hit the end of the month, possibly beginning of June. But it's out there. The House is expected to consider it. The Democrats have control. We expect it to pass. And then I think negotiations will continue with the Senate in terms of what will get to the president and what will the president actually sign. And as we all know, depending on the day, that changes what he will publicly say that he will sign. So in its current form, no chance. I can say that with authority, but some form, yes. I think we're going to have another COVID relief package passed within the next month or so. Liability protection. I have this under federal, but please recognize that this is a priority for us all the way down to local, federal, state, and local. We know that as we come out on the other side of it, that liability protection is going to be key for all of you as you reopen your operations. Lawyers are, they're salivating. Trial lawyers are salivating for lawsuits as it pertains to COVID, which we recognize would just decimate your industry and our industry as you're trying to come out of this. So liability protection is being discussed at the federal level. We have legislation we'll be introducing at the state level. So please understand that we recognize it as important, that it is a threat. If we don't have liability protection, it is a threat to your business. The governor could do a broad sweeping announcement for liability protection. He has declined to so far. So we do expect that it's going to need a legislative fix, whether it's federal or state. But we do have this on our list of priorities, and it is something that we're going to keep on banging the drum on, because we do know that when you reopen, this is going to be the next threat that's hanging over your heads. That's where we are federally. It's a lot of wait and see. Hopefully next week I have more news. State. This is really just kind of to speak to some of the questions I've gotten this week and then some timely updates. I put on here the counties gone rogue, because I have gotten some questions in terms of some of the counties that have said, we are going to go to yellow. We know our constituents, we know our people better than you do. We're prepared to go to yellow. Our hospitals are fine. About 7 counties made that announcement over the course of this past weekend. The governor did, I think, what those of us who are political nerds expected him to do, and he doubled down. And I have gotten questions of, does the governor have the authority to double down? And he does, unfortunately. Every court case that has been filed against him has been lost. The courts have unilaterally said a state of emergency is a state of emergency. It puts a lot of leniency and abilities in the hands of the governor. And what he stated on Monday, which was federal funds will not be seen by counties, not entirely true, because some of those federal funds are going directly to counties and not going through the state government. Further, he can stop state controlled funds from going to counties. That's the Treasury, that's under his purview. And for all the businesses out there, I know, trust me, I know how frustrating this is, and I would hope that he would not go as far, but the governor has control over the LCB, which has control of your liquor license. He has control over Department of Ag, that has control of your food license. He has control over Treasury, which and revenue, which is your use permit. I mean, he can yank these permits if you operate at a time that he has not authorized you to do so. I do not consider this to be a really long-term threat. We are seeing not only obviously the pressure that's coming from the people, but legislators are starting to get concerned. And we are seeing some of that concern coming from the Democratic caucus that there is not enough movement forward as it pertains to reopening. So I do not think that this threat is a long-term threat. But I would say in the short term, be very careful if you are considering reopening your business beyond the parameters that are required of you in the phase that you are in. Further guidance on red to yellow. I wanted to cover this only because there have been some issues with the LCB, which will segue into my next piece that I'm talking about. If you are a county that went from red to yellow, really nothing has changed for our industry. And that was confirmed even further by the LCB this week as it pertains to operations, and I'll touch upon that. But really, the interpretation is that you're still not allowed to have any on-premise dining, whether that's indoor and outdoor. Further to that end, there was a bit of misunderstanding as it pertains to if you are in the yellow stage, if a customer comes in and gets takeout and maybe a 6-pack of beer or not even a beer, can they sit out on your patio where you have outdoor seating? There is no service. Can they go there? There was a thought that that might be permitted in the yellow phase of reopening. It has since been determined that it will not be permitted, that the LCE, the enforcer, would consider that a violation. Further to that end, they are stipulating that if people are tailgating in your parking lot, that could be considered a violation as well. The interpretation, until or unless the governor states otherwise, is that since the governor said nothing changes for restaurants in red to yellow, he said we're still closed, therefore the same controls and limitations apply to restaurants in the yellow stage of reopening. So be careful on that front. Do I think that there's going to be fines and licenses pulled? No, but the LCB has doubled down and basically said you cannot allow any congregating of people on restaurant property for any reason. So with that, legislators are getting a little frustrated, and I think I might have mentioned it last week, I don't know, on 1 or 2 or 3 webinars, potentially looking at a legislative discussion as it pertains to restaurant operations, and that discussion is beginning today. House State Government, the chairman of that is Representative Garth Everett from Lycoming County. He has introduced 2 pieces of legislation. The first, he is running through that committee today. It's House Bill 2506, and it would require or allow restaurants to reopen for outdoor dining in the yellow stage of reopening. So it basically puts into statute what we've been asking for over the past few weeks. And that bill is scheduled to move out of committee today. And the House could consider it as early as next week. It's going to be interesting to see where the votes land on that piece, if we have some Democrats that come over or if they stay lockstep with the governor. So we will be watching that carefully. And this is really just it's been effective in some ways. So we've seen legislation move to open up construction. A few weeks later, the governor opened up construction. it was done for golf courses, then golf courses could open. So we're just trying to drive the dialogue, show that there is political will to allow outdoor dining in the yellow phase. To that end, allow for the extension of premises. If you have a liquor license, allow you, working with the LCB, to allow you to extend that into the parking lot so you can expand that space and serve your guests. All of those are part of a legislative and discussion that we're having with departments as well. And House Bill 2513 has been filed. It's not moving today. It takes that a step further and would allow on-premise dining up to 50% of occupancy in the yellow stage as well. They are two different bills because one probably has a chance for bipartisan support more than the other right now, but both of them have been introduced, and House Bill 2506 is scheduled to move out of committee today, and the House could move it, like I said, as early as next week. And John, I don't know if you can update on some of the conversations you've been having, because we have been going after this outdoor dining piece on two fronts.
I'd be happy to, Melissa. Thank you. Our chairman, Bill Kowaleski, MediaPass chairman, Jim Friss, and board member and National Restaurant Association board member, Mike Axiotis, and I did have a conversation with the governor and his key direct reports regarding these issues, and specifically dining in the yellow phase. And I think all of our delegation agreed that the governor was very sympathetic to dining in the yellow phase and is eager to see a way to make that happen. That said, there's not a timeline on it, but he did instruct one of his folks to work with us on that, and we have that ongoing. So I don't want to project a timeline, but I will say that he was sympathetic to our needs. We also talked about the green stage and the concept of working with the folks that are developing reopening standards for the green stage, which would be health officials and administrative folks for restaurants. That work has not taken place yet, and he was also welcoming as far as our involvement in helping to make sure that as much as possible that their safety is balanced with practicality and with good common sense. So the outcome was it was a very positive meeting, and we hope that things will move along on that front. And Melissa, as she has pointed out, there's legislation to take it from a different direction. So one way or another, we're trying to do everything we can to get some relief for restaurants. And as I said, the meeting was he was very sympathetic and very, at least empathetic to the plight of restaurants when we talked with them. So I'll turn it back to you, Melissa. Thank you for that.
Okay, let's go into the kind of the meat of the entire webinar today, because this has been my baby over the past few weeks, and I've mentioned it before. But today, I really want to do a deep dive because House Bill 327 is slated to go to the governor today. Past the Senate, the House is expected to sign it, and it should be on the governor's desk tonight or first thing tomorrow. And this is mixed drinks to go. I'm going to really go into what's contained in it, what you need to know, because a key part of this is it is effective immediately. So when we drafted it, we made sure that as soon as the governor signs it, you can start selling mixed drinks out the door if you are a restaurant or hotel licensed. So the guidance I'm providing you with today is really going to be key, especially if we can convince the governor which we are trying to do, is to sign it tonight or tomorrow so you can start selling this weekend. So the next few pages of information is really going to deep dive into what is in the legislation, and then we can take any questions from there. So I think, like I said, once this is signed, it's a go. You don't need a permit. You don't need a license. You don't need to pay any fees. There's nothing you need to do with the LCB. I know this is shocking, but you do not need to reach out to the LCB before you're allowed to sell mixed drinks to go. Eric, can we go to the next slide? Okay, eligibility. We have tailored this bill very specifically, and that is to only allow those licensees that have suffered because of COVID to be able to sell mixed drinks to go. So it is only for restaurant and hotel licensees. If you are a brewery, you have a G license, this does not apply to you. If you have a couplet license, and you have a G and an R, which is way in the weeds for some of you that aren't liquor nerds like me, you can. So if you have an R or an H license and you have lost more than 25% of your average monthly sales due to COVID, you are allowed to sell mixed drinks to go. That parameter will be sold, be determined, and we're more of a complaint basis, but we believe that it's going to be based on you showing February to March 16th to when you were shut down, to March 16th to April 16th. And I would love to see the restaurant that has not lost more than 25% of sales, because you have a business model that I've never seen before. So those are the parameters. Like I said, there's nothing you need to apply. There's nothing you need to prove unless LCE comes in because somebody filed a complaint against you. And even then, I don't think it would be difficult to approve that loss of sale. Another provision that's part of this, if you are closed right now, you cannot just reopen and sell mixed drinks to go. You do have to have some type of food as well. You do not need to require a mixed drink to be purchased with food. That's not the requirement, but you do need to have food available. So you can't just open up your business and say, I am selling martinis out the front door without offering any other food as well. So there is that restriction, and that's really to stop people that might be abusing it and maybe running an establishment that is not the most appealing at a time like this. So that is a provision that's part of this. And then further, you can only sell these mixed drinks until 11 p.m. in the evening. You cannot sell them up until 2 o'clock in the morning like you would your on-premise. So those are the boxes that need to be checked in terms of eligibility to do this. Again, you do not need a permit. Once this is signed, we're ready to rock. What can be sold? Whoever drafted this is just brilliant. I want to shake their hand. A sealed container of no less than 4 ounces and no greater than 64 fluid ounces in a single transaction. So you cannot sell shots. You cannot put Jack Daniels in a little bathroom cup and sell that out the door with a squeeze of lime. It does have to be a minimum of 4 fluid ounces and up to 64 fluid ounces. For my restaurants, as you know, that is a growler. You can't sell more than that in a single transaction. It's very similar to your beer and wine provisions. You can't sell more than 192 ounces of beer. You can't sell more than 4 bottles of wine if you hold a wet. A key part of this is that it has to hold spirit and mixer combined on the licensed premise. You're probably aware that the LCB is starting to sell kind of cans of pre-mixed cocktails. Those are not permitted under this bill. The LCB, the goal is that you don't sell anything that the LCB can sell because, you know, they're the LCB. So you do have to create a cocktail on the licensed premises to be sold to go. I have gotten some questions on this. Literally, what I have on this PowerPoint is what it says. Spirits and mixers combined. If you put 10 ounces of Captain Morgan in a cup and a squeeze of lime, you might have an argument there. But it can't be in the original container. It has to be in a new container. And like I said, it can't just be straight spirits. There has to be some type of mixer contained. To that end, sealed container, we also drafted this very specifically to recognize the supply chain issue. So this is really open-ended, but there are parameters. So a packaged container with a secure lid or cap designed to prevent consumption without removal of the lid or cap. Also, if you have a lid and there's a hole for a straw, you can cover it with tape, and that is now considered a sealed container. So 4 ounces and 64 ounces, you have to seal it. I don't care if it is a bucket with a seal on it. They don't care as long as it is a sealed container that you're selling out the door. And I'm making this very clear because when this goes into effect for my Harrisburg locations, I still want my margarita. So whoever sends me an email first saying you're ready to rock, I will be there to get my 64-ounce margarita to enjoy this weekend. So these are the parameters of what you can sell. Next slide. Other things that you need to know, and we worked through this, for those of you that have a wine expanded permit, this first provision is not new to you. You must obtain a transaction scan device to verify the age of anyone under 35. You do not need to do this immediately. We made this clear. If you have a WEP, that is a provision of having a WEP. If you want to get a wine expanded permit, you have to have that transaction scan device. Recognizing that they will be difficult to obtain, we do have 60 days for you to obtain that transaction scan device. So if we are still in this land of, and we'll get to kind of the other provisions, if we're still in this land in 60 days, you need to obtain that device. We have already been sourcing, Eric and Heidi, I think are both on the call, have done a phenomenal job of sourcing various transaction scan devices from handheld standalone devices or devices that you can connect to your phone. So we're prepared to have those resources to you if, God forbid, we're still in this land 60 days from now. So you will need to obtain that. Further, you must post a sign that the alcohol must be transported in the trunk or a location not occupied by driver or passengers. PRLA is going to surprise. We will make up that sign. My communications team is actually all monitoring the LC hearing and some other hearings for me right now, but we will be coming up with a sign that you can post that contains that. There is no statement of where the sign needs to be posted. You could put it over the bar, you could put it on your front door, but you do need to have a sign that just states that this is considered an open container. Do not put it in your cup holder. Well, you can, but just recognize that it would be considered an open container and you could be cited for that. So we will provide that sign. We will work on it today. Like I said, with the hope that the governor signs this tonight or tomorrow and we're ready to rock by this weekend. He has 10 days to sign it. Of course, we believe and are hopeful that he will sign it earlier than that. Other provisions. Next slide. There we go. This is an interesting item that we've added. And this is for if any of you are not operating right now and you don't plan to operate in the near future. And you probably, for those of you, again, liquor nerds that have seen this in the past, if a licensee closes, they just go out of business. They have the ability to sell their liquor to another licensee. It has to be documented and sent to the LCB. This extends that, or if a licensee is closed or isn't going to do mixed drinks to go, it just doesn't fit their business model, they can sell their liquor from their license to another licensee. So you can procure product from another licensee. You do have to notify the LCB in writing that you did this, but if there is somebody, like I said, who is out of business, doesn't plan to utilize this, you could purchase product from them. And a key part of this is how long does this go to? And there's kind of two sunsets in place here. One is if the disaster emergency is over. COVID is not a threat to the state of Pennsylvania anymore. When that goes away, this goes away in this bill. Another provision is recognizing that even when we hit green, sorry to be the bearer of bad news, we do not believe restaurants are going to be able to operate at 100% occupancy. It's just not. The social distancing, the things that you're going to have to do, we're not going to be at 100% for a while. So if once you can have occupancy more than 60%, then this would go away, because the thought process is that you're operating as you were before, close to where you were before. So this would go away once you're above that 60% mark. Those are the two sunsets as to when this would go away. So some counties might be, if there's like green, or maybe there's green and bright green is 100%. The day I know what the further steps are, I will be doing a lot better than I am right now. But once we hit that 60%, this ends. To that end, we also recognize, and this bill was drafted in a way that, God forbid, if we have another peak in cases and a county reverts back or to yellow or red, or your capacity is changed, this goes right back into effect again. So it really is there to assist you while you're not at full capacity, while you're not fully operational, really just to kind of get you on the other side of where we are in terms of this crisis. So that is kind of, I think that'll be, yeah, so that's the bill. And I know I'm going to get questions. I know I have some on here right now that I will address once we get through the rest of the slides, which I think John will cover. But really, this is not a cure-all. We recognize it's not a cure-all, but we also recognize that it could help. And for some of you, it could be the difference between operating at 30% and maybe 50%. And we think that it's something that was worthy of pursuing. The legislature agreed. Never have I seen a liquor bill move so quickly. And we spent a lot of time paving the way for that. But we really think that this is going to be helpful for all of you. And with the weather possibly being warm for a day, maybe two if we're lucky this weekend, and then down the line, this is really going to be a good opportunity. And with that, I will turn it. I don't know if Hope or John is going to cover the other slides.
Okay, Hope has up here on your screen upcoming webinars. Hope Sterner in particular is spending an inordinate amount of time trying to gather information on helpful webinars. And unfortunately, right now, a lot of people have time to view these, but there are things that will help you get reopened, help you get through the crisis. So be aware that we continue to gather those. And also on the website, there's a lot of resources for reopening now, reopening safely, practices that you should be undertaking. So look at the COVID-19 webpage. It's updated every day, sometimes every hour. And then we've talked about these every other week. Most of you have been on these sessions before with us, so thank you for that. But first is the HARP, Hospitality Assistance Response of Pennsylvania. We've added a text to donate link to this as well now. We're getting a lot of individual donations. We're about ready to give out the first tranche of grants, which will be in the neighborhood of 400 or 500 people. And then we're continuing to raise money so that we can help displaced hospitality workers live in Pennsylvania with cash grants. Then the second is Carry Out PA, which has been phenomenally successful, and we appreciate the tourism office and many radio and stations and social media outlets around the state that have been helping to promote those of you who are offering carry out and delivery. And we've heard great stories about the amount of business you've been able to do through that. Certainly not enough to sustain long term, but to help get through this this crisis. And then lastly, as also mentioned earlier, Heidi and Eric are working to try to find resources for you, such as masks, face shields, and thermometers, and other guidance documents. You can find that there. We also were able to negotiate an agreement with a group, and it's called Icebox. It's a uniform company, and you'll find that in the banner ad, that they typically deal only with large restaurant and other service chains, but they agreed to make their products available to PRLA as well, anybody that accesses our website. There's some pretty good deals and availability on face coverings, whereas others may not. So those are a few things I wanted to update for you, and Melissa's probably ready to answer some of the questions now, so I'll turn it back to her.
All right. Martini or Manhattan, meaning spirited vermouth only, I'd assume are not allowed. That would be correct. But when I make my martinis, I put in a splash of olive juice, which is non-alcoholic. So there's that. And then for my Manhattans, I throw in some bitters, which are non-alcoholic. So you could also say that an ice cube could count as non-alcoholic. It's open. So I think there's some wiggle room in all of this for you to make that work. But no, for you to just put in vodka and vermouth without anything else, that would not be permitted. Can I sell multiple 64-ounce containers to the same customer? What if 4 people come in together? Do they each qualify for up to 64 ounces? This is exactly the same as beer. So you can only sell 64 ounces in a single transaction. So if 4 people come in and they each want 64 ounces, or the entirety of them want 64 ounces apiece, you have to do 4 separate transactions. And the maximum container size is 64 ounces. So you would need to do 4 separate 64-ounce transactions. You can't, it's not based on person, it's based on the limits per transaction. It's very similar, like I said, to your beer at 192 ounces. Do they have to drive away, walk up, bicycle? Not kidding. No, they're curbside. They can walk and take out curbside. It doesn't matter if they are on a tandem bicycle. Drinking and driving, don't, find a place to put it in the little basket at the front of the bike or something like that. There's nothing saying that they need to be in a vehicle. That would be very discriminatory and also unsafe. So no, they can, whatever means of transportation that people come up on, they're able to get it to go. Are draft beers permitted in sealed containers up to 64 ounces? Yes, licensees are allowed to sell beer to go in growlers. That's actually been, I don't want to say for all of time, but that is permitted. Now, if you do not have a setup, and my brewers will probably all nod their heads yes, some of those growlers are rough if you're refilling a growler. So make sure you have the ability to clean the growler before you fill it. Second to that, if you are using your beer lines, you need to start getting your beer lines cleaned again. The LCB did say that if you are shut down and not using your beer, you do not need to get them cleaned on the weekly provision or bi-weekly, depending on the service you use. But if you are selling beer, you need to start getting your lines cleaned and serviced again. But that's been a benefit of a restaurant and hotel license to sell 192 ounces of beer, whether it's in a growler, a can. That's always been permitted. 60% capacity, does that mean 60% of the average monthly sales for a year prior to COVID? No, that's different. So that's going to be your seating. It's going to be based on your occupancy of what you're allowed to be. So for example, in Georgia, only 25% occupancy in restaurants. So and we believe that Pennsylvania might jump over 25 and go to 50. So once the governor or CDC says that restaurants can operate at 75% capacity or 62% capacity, then this would go away. It's based on your occupancy abilities, not on your sales as it pertains to the reopening or the provision going away. For the temporary outside seating, can it be a parking lot or sidewalk in front of establishment, and LCB does not have to be notified? If you are a licensee and those entities are licensed, they're part of your premises. Because as you know, when you submitted for your liquor license, you had to provide a diagram, a map of the exact parameters of the location that you were licensing. Some people who have sidewalk sales, in Philadelphia especially, they have extended their license into the sidewalk. If you've done that, you're already authorized to do it. If your license is not inclusive of your parking lot or your sidewalk, then you would need to get an extension of premises from the LCB. So that is based on the parameters that you submitted for your liquor license. For a hotel, can guests drink the beverage outside of their hotel room in the lobby outdoors? That would be based on red or yellow, depending on what phase you are in. In red, there can be no congregating of guests. So you need to, and as I said, a lot of this is personal responsibility. The governor has said this over and over again, but you need to ensure that people are not congregating in public spaces of the hotel as it pertains to the consuming of any beverages or even consuming takeout that they get from the restaurant. Yellow stage, we believe that there will be some leniency there. We don't believe that the parameters on an R licensee would essentially apply to an H licensee. We're looking for clarification. But again, you need to keep in mind that people still need to be wearing their masks. They can't congregate in groups of 25 or more. So you need to be very careful in terms of the congregating that's allowed to take place on the hotel property. We've been told the LCB is relaxing cleaning of beer lines every 14 days. Are we still required to clean every 7 days, or is it now 14? PRLA has been working on that. That change has not happened yet. It went to IRC, which is the Independent Regulatory Review Commission, which some of you might have heard me talk about before when we were talking about overtime regs. It will happen. We believe it will happen soon, but it has not happened yet. So I think there is a provision that if you use a certain type of cleaner, high capacity, that you can do it every 14 days, but regular beer line cleaning remains at 7, with the hope that in the near future it will go to 14, and it should. We just don't know the timeline just relating to meetings and COVID as to when that will happen, but it should be within the next few months. Will municipalities be able to reduce occupancy more than the state orders? We haven't seen that, to be honest, and the only areas that we believe there'd be authorization to is if a county has their own health department. So that would be Philadelphia, Chester, Erie, Allegheny, and there's a few others in between. I'm just not thinking of them. Beyond that, it would fall under the state and Department of Ag. We have not, and quite frankly, I've yet to see a municipality that thinks that they want more tighter restrictions than what the governor has on people right now. So I wouldn't expect it, and we do believe that they need a health department, especially as it pertains to restaurant operations, to limit capacity. Can you sell draft beer in to-go cups with sealed lids, not growlers? Yes, I mean, you can. You just need to, I mean, it needs to be sealed, and that would still be subject to the open container laws that an individual would be subject to, even with mixed drinks to go. So, I mean, draft beer can be sold up to 192 ounces. So you could put it in a pitcher and they could walk out the door. They'd probably get pulled over, but there aren't parameters on that front. Okay. Aside from liquor laws, are we going to discuss gatherings once we are in the yellow? If so, as we move the yellow and we allow groups of 25 to gather, can we host a larger group if we split up into smaller meeting rooms of only 25? So if I have a group of 50 to 100 meeting, I can put the main event in one room with 25 people and simulcast the presentation to breakout rooms of 25. That is an in the weeds question, and I'm not going to tell you what the official answer is, because I'm going to tell you what my gut is that as long as people are separated and there's no more than 25 people in a room, you're meeting the parameters of the 25 people rule in yellow. So as long as you don't have more than 25 in a room, I would say that would be permissible in the yellow stage, not in red. Where can we find the full listing of regulations pertaining to yellow phase? All we've seen is the FAQ sheet. Local folks are making up their own rules if they don't see it on the short list, such as the outdoor seating at restaurants. And a lot of you have heard me say this before. They put stuff out there and then they're just like, figure it out, Godspeed, like God bless you. And that's really a lot of it. So we have the FAQ, which Denise, you mentioned. Further to that, there are guidelines as it pertains to businesses that are operating in yellow, but there is none saying specifically, well, the LCB should be sending out guidance as it relates to restaurants and outdoor seating. But we have had in our daily updates, the FAQ, in addition to if you are operating, these are the standards that you need to meet. So those are in the daily updates. And as we get things, like I said, outdoor seating, if you're a liquor license, falls under LCB. So we expect clarification from them on that. If you don't have a liquor license and you have outdoor seating, we expect Ag to be issuing guidance on that. So we have guidance coming from a lot of different areas as different departments determine what the governor means. And I said this last week, we get an announcement and then it takes us about a week to figure out what it actually means. So we will, and all of that has been in our updates, and we're sharing the information as soon as we receive it. And really the information that we're sharing is all we have from the governor's office right now. I will say they're updating the FAQ sheet at the end of this week as it pertains to outdoor pools and items like that and outdoor recreation. So we will get that out as soon as that is updated. We do expect guidance on that front at least. In the lodging hotels, is there specific guidelines on what is considered a clean guest room? There is requirements in terms of sanitation, and PRLA has the hotel promise, which goes into a little bit more information of the type of cleaning and sanitation that would be required. John, I don't know if you want to speak to that. Yeah,
we've been working with this, and it's not every piece of guidance you should have, and we have those available on the website. I mentioned come both from the HNLA, and there's a document that we've signed on to with the HNLA called American Hotel Lodging Association called Stay Safe or Safe Stay. I can't remember which one it is. It's got all of the details that you need. It's kind of like our Pennsylvania Hotel Promise, only with more details. But the Hotel Promise that I'm not sure we've published yet, maybe we have, I think we're finishing up the last couple of days, will give you a lot of the guidance there as to what people would be looking for in a hotel. I've spent a lot of time on interviews with reporters asking how can people feel comfortable in hotels, and as I pointed out, hotels and restaurants have high standards of sanitation. They've always had it. They've had to in order to stay in business. And we've heightened them now. And there's a lot of reasons why hotels are probably the safest places to stay when you're traveling. So take a look at the hotel promise. If it's not on the website, it will be shortly. Thanks, Melissa.
Yep. Can we sell wine in sealed containers to go? You cannot sell wine unless you have a wine expanded permit. I know I got a question yesterday about sangria. No, if you are selling, a lot of people invested in that $2,000 permit, which is why when we were discussing trying to lower that permit fee or allowing it during the crisis, and it really wasn't fair for people who invested the $2,000 for other people to get the same benefit without the investment. If you have a wine expanded permit, have at it. If you do not, no, you cannot sell wine in a sealed container. Can you further explain what a transaction scan device is? It's an ID scanner, and it comes in a lot of different forms. You've probably seen it if you've gone to any type of like beach bar or something like that. It's where they scan the ID and it verifies that the ID is legit. It pops up with the age. It is better at tracking fake IDs. So that's like the handheld ones that you can get. Further, there are attachments that you can attach to a smartphone or an iPad and scan that way. So it's literally a device that proves that the person is over the age of 21. And like I said, we have been sourcing a number of those, and we will make them available. We do have 60 days from when this is signed for you to get it, but we will make that information available. Guidance for show cave tours needed. The only guidance we have right now is that entertainment is not permitted. That's where the governor is in yellow phase. As I mentioned before, we are expecting more guidance as it pertains to outdoor recreation, which that could fall into. We're expecting that this week. We've gotten no guidance from the governor's office as it pertains to zoos that are outdoor and practice social distancing or anything that's outdoor. Let's see. Thank you, Michael Pfeiffer. Oh, John, go ahead.
I was going to say, Edward, that's a good question. And, you know, if you think about it, there are so many different businesses out there with so many different needs. And this is such an unknown, this COVID-19, that you would think, well, there's got to be guidance on how restaurants are going to reopen. There's not even that yet. And so I don't want to sound negative because it's not meant to be negative, but literally everyone's making it up as they go because this is so new. That's why we brought together, I think you were on the call, why we brought together the events and venues group to try to maybe come up with some guidance that we could advise elected officials on moving forward. We're going to continue to do that in every way that we can. But it's a good question without an answer today. Thanks, Melissa.
Yep. And I see Kamara said there are apps that can be downloaded to phones and tablets for the ID scanner. That's correct. We have, did you say sangria is illegal? Because the way we make it is a mixed drink with spirits and wine. So if a cocktail includes wine as an ingredient, it would be disallowed. This legislation specifically says it has to be a mix of spirits and non-alcoholic beverages. Wine is not a spirit. So no, sangria, are you going to get cited and your license pulled for it? No, but the legislation specifically says it has to be spirits and a non-alcoholic beverage. It doesn't allow for wine in any capacity. If you have a wine expanded permit, you could do wine, you could do sangria because you have the ability to sell wine out the door. And I think that gets us to the end with 10 minutes to spare. So hope I can give it another minute or two. And please stay tuned. We will get, once this bill passes, we will get it out there. But also know that we need the governor's signature. So start coming up with your creative cocktail recipe, start thinking about it, but until the governor signs it, we are in a holding pattern. But like I said, we expect that to be shortly.
Well, I think you've answered all the questions today, so we can end a little early. I did mention before, this will be recorded. We will send it out as we always do, and we'll be up on our website. If you have questions, please, I think you can submit questions through our website or to us individually. And everyone, I hope you have a great day, and thanks again for joining us today.
Thanks,
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone.